Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I am Renee Brooks, a program specialist with the Division of Community Assistance in the Office of Community Services. Today's webinar is PEAAK Planning, State Plans Beyond Compliance. As you enter the webinar, please let us know where you are joining us from in the chat. Now, before moving forward, I would like to go over a few items. Everyone has been muted on entry, and we ask that everyone remains on mute throughout the webinar. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please enter those using the Q&A function on Zoom. We will have time to address those questions at the end of the webinar. And this Q&A is what the presenters will be monitoring. Also, note this webinar is being recorded. The recording, along with a copy of the slides, will be posted to the OCS CSBG webinar page linked here. All right, so during today's webinar, we will begin with a welcome from our lovely Director of the Division of Community Assistance, Sharice Johnson, followed by a review of the PEAAK framework with the Program Operations Specialist, myself, Renee Brooks. Following up, you will hear from members of the Program Operations Branch as they provide an overview of the requirements for the FY24 CSBG State Plan, including timelines, the CSBG eligible entity list, and the required sections for a complete CSBG State Plan. We will end the webinar with time for questions. Again, please be sure to ask all questions in the Q&A function on Zoom. Now, without further ado, I will now hand it over to the Director of the Division of Community Assistance, Sharice Johnson.
Thank you, Renee. Good afternoon. I am Sharice Johnson, the Division Director for the Division of Community Assistance, and we are so pleased to welcome states, territories, and the CSBG Network to today's webinar on submitting your fiscal year 2025 annual state plan. Before we dive in, I want to acknowledge that we're at the end of Community Action Month. OCS kicked off the month on May 1st with a bang. Please look forward for additional information coming out by the end of the month. But in reflection, 60 years ago, President Johnson first declared a war on poverty, and along with the shared but powerful responsibility of alleviating poverty and supporting self-sufficiency with the establishment of community action. From President Johnson to President Biden on the screen, who acknowledged the power of community action and the Community Action Network. State administrators and staff, you play an important and significant role through your belief in the work of CSBG, oversight, your guidance, monitoring, and technical assistance to enable eligible entities and grant recipients to carry out the hope of community action. I hope you see yourself in the letter from the president, and I hope you see that your work has been acknowledged in many, many ways. Additionally, we wanted to share a recap of the May 1st event through graphic recording to chronicle this important time. You can see through the graphic reporting on the slide of all of the activities that were carried out on May 1st to really allow us to reflect, to hear from what's going on now, to bring partners in the room, and really to have a great opportunity to just celebrate the progress of the Community Action Network. This has been 60 years of progress, and in many ways, this graphic recording kind of describes what went on in that room on May 1st. Please know that OCS remains dedicated to being partners and good stewards in ensuring CSBG funding reaches the most vulnerable communities and is utilized to implement community-driven and innovative strategies that create opportunities for upward economic mobility. And it's amazing, but that is in your plans, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Good stewardship stems from great leadership. Under the leadership of Dr. Laniqua Howard, the Office of Community Services moves under the following 4 priorities, and you see them on your screen: ensuring the programs we administer are of the highest quality possible and are reaching those most in need. Lifting voices from the field, you've heard us talk about that a lot, and using lessons learned to be thoughtful, inclusive, and innovative in our approaches. Identifying opportunities to break down silos and implement cross-cutting initiatives within OCS and ACL and across the federal government. and amplifying connections to the Biden-Harris administration's top 4 priorities for better supporting families and communities. But before we really get started in talking about the state plan, we would like for you to take advantage of this poll. Please take a moment to share in the chat your answer on this poll question. So the poll question is, the next one, I think it's the next slide. Please take a moment to share in the poll how you meet OCS's priorities through the administration of CSBG. And we'll give you a few minutes to answer the poll question. So we see a growing number of you all participating. We're up to about 17% of all participants on this call have answered the polling question. It's going to be so exciting how you see yourselves in carrying out the work of CSBG. So as we continue to get results from the polling questions, it looks like we've received quite a few. So let's see what the responses are. And we have one person's hand raised in the chat. I'm not sure if it's a question around having access to the poll or not. I don't see any answers to the poll question yet. Well, I am positive that you all can see yourselves in the work, and if we can show the answers later, we will. As discussed earlier, community action is rooted in the war on poverty, stemming from the passage of the Economic Opportunity Act of 1964, authorized by the Community Services Block Grant Act in 1998. CSBG provides funds to states, territories, and tribes and tribal organizations for distribution to local community action agencies to support a wide range of community-based activities to meet the goals of CSBG. Within OCS, the Division of Community Assistance partners with states, territories, tribal organizations, communities, and community action agencies to eliminate the causes and conditions of poverty, increase self-sufficiency of individuals and families with low incomes, and revitalize communities. We've made great progress over the last 60 years of community action, and there is much more work that we can do. Today's webinar, the State Plan PEAAK Planning, State Plans Beyond Compliance, Diving Deep, is so important as we think about our history in community action and we think about the opportunities that are ahead of us. Why is this so important today to have this conversation? It's to inform some of you all, to remind some people of the important work that we're supposed to do, and to really help you to go back and look at how you started your state plan and make sure that you're following all the necessary steps to submit a successful state plan. The model state plan is a statement to the federal government of the intended use of CSBG federal dollars from administrative perspectives, programmatic, and financial perspectives, and how states will meet the terms of the certifications. The state plan describes how funds will be used to support activities that are designed to assist low-income families and individuals, including families and individuals receiving assistance, homeless families, and individuals, migrant or seasonal farm workers, and elderly low-income individuals and families, to enable the families and individuals to remove obstacles and solve problems that block the achievement of self-sufficiency. So when you submit your state plan, which is due on September 1st of 2024, we will hear from you how you plan on using the resources in your state to meet the goals of CSBG. You will hear the September 1st, 2024 date many, many times during this webinar, as well as in future webinars. You will hear things like, we don't want extensions. What we do offer is to support you in submitting your annual report by September 2024. And my expectation is that we will get 100% of our state plans by that date. Why is that so important? That is so important because to qualify for FY 2025 CSBG funding, CSBG grant recipients must submit the completed CSBG state plan. We want you to dig deep. We want you to reflect on what we've learned over many, many years of focusing on anti-poverty strategies as you think about developing your plan. And we want you to take full advantage of the technical support that we have in our Office of Community Services, to support you in submitting your plan by September 1st. Please don't forget, we are not offering you extensions. We're saying we're here to support you, but we need all plans submitted by September 1st. And the group of presenters for the remainder of this webinar are going to share with you on how to submit a successful plan by September 1st. I wish you the best. I can't wait to see what these plans look like during this special time. And I'm going to turn it over to Renee Brooks, a program specialist in the Division of Community Services, who's going to offer some technical support to you in planning to submit your report, your plan. Thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day and a good week. Bye-bye.
Hello again, everyone. We are always glad to talk about PEAK in hopes that it continues to pique your interest. At a recent conference, Verna used an analogy for PEAK that I will share with you today. 3 years after the declaration of the War on Poverty in 1964, McDonald's Big Mac became available on the menu, and for the record, I am not promoting McDonald's nor the Big Mac. This is just an analogy. Since 1967, people have been eating Big Macs. Over the course of almost 60 years, the Big Mac has gone from a collapsible clamshell folding box to a more environmentally friendly packaging, but it remained the Big Mac. And periodically, McDonald's offers something called the Double Big Mac, where they add an additional 2 beef patties and a bit more of that secret sauce. I'm asking you to think of the PEAK framework as a more environmentally friendly packaging of all of our performance management tools, with the addition of the performance management website as the double beef and the focus on training and technical assistance as the extra secret sauce that goes across each area of PEAK, being performance evaluation, accountability, accessibility, and knowledge. Performance for state administrators, I ask you to focus your attention on the importance of you taking the time to complete the ACSI survey while it is anonymous. Those results impact the way we do our work, just as when the CAAs take the ASCI. States should use the data to make improvements to the way in which you do your work. And building from the ACSI underperformance to the state accountability measures under evaluation 3SD talks about the state using the ACSI data to make adjustments to the state plan regarding how to better channel discretionary funds to improve this training and technical assistance provided to the eligible entities. Again, tools for performance management. You all know how important the state plan is for accountability, as it should be a living, breathing document that guides state administrators with administering CSBG. meets compliance the requirements of Section 676 of the public law and helps get you get funding released as soon as it is apportioned. Equally important is the annual report, which provides evidence of what has been and is our current mechanism for collecting data for the state profiles and briefing documents. OCS reports the report to Congress, and there are various other ways that states use the data obtained from the annual report. Then we see the performance management website under accessibility, and I will not go into detail here as our performance data and evaluation branch has been leading discussions on it, but I hope you all have obtained access and are exploring the system, which brings me to the K for knowledge, which is where I will lift up training and technical assistance, although it is important in every area of the framework. It is particularly important in this area as it is necessary to build capacity through knowledge gain. You also see the additional tools such as the CSBG Service Finder app and CSBG Spotlight videos that will be made available that also advance our efforts to effectively administer CSBG. So again, PEAAK is a framework used to help us talk through the many tools we have at our disposal to be good stewards over the resources made available through CSBG funding so we can ultimately win the war over poverty. And as you see on this slide, the submission of the CSBG State Application and Plan became a requirement for eligibility following the passage of the CSBG Act. The CSBG State Plan serves as an application for CSBG funding and provides a roadmap detailing how each state will administer CSBG funds in support of continued progression towards meeting the 3 national program goals to 1, eliminate the causes and consequences of poverty, 2, empower low-income families and individuals to become self-sufficient, and 3, revitalize low-income communities. Completing the state plan is not just about meeting a legislative requirement. It serves as a tool for continuous quality improvement and a way for states to develop and implement important processes to ensure CSBG funds are successfully administered. All federal fiscal year 2025 state plans are due by September 1st, 2024. The key components required for a complete state plan submission includes the CSBG eligible entity list, the standard form for federal federal assistance, also known as the SF424M, and the CSBG State Plan sections 1 through 15, including an up-to-date designation letter. The CSBG State Plan is subject to all requirements of the CSBG Act, including the public hearing requirement. As a reminder, the CSBG State Plan is based on the federal fiscal year, which goes from October 1st through September 30th. CSBG grant recipients have the option to submit a CSBG State Plan that covers 1 fiscal year or 2 consecutive fiscal years. For this submission, a 1-year plan should cover fiscal year 2025 or October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025. A 2-year plan should cover fiscal year 2025, which is October 1st, 2024 through September 30th, 2025. And fiscal year 2026, which is October 1st, 2025 through September 30th, 2026. All right. As noted on the slide, the lead agencies in Teal Group A are required to submit a completed CSBG state plan for the fiscal year 25 CSBG state plan cycle. So this includes Alabama, Alaska, Arizona, Connecticut, District of Columbia, Florida, Georgia, Idaho, Indiana, Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, Mississippi, Nebraska, Nevada, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Oregon, Puerto Rico, South Carolina, South Dakota, Utah, Vermont, Virginia, and Washington. All right, and the lead agencies in magenta are not required to submit a complete CSBG state plan for the fiscal year CSBG state plan cycle. The listed states and territories under Group B may still revise their accepted CSBG state plan. However, OCS does not require states to revise their accepted 2-year state plans. OCS suggests only doing so for major revisions, which include, but are not limited to, changes to the CSBG eligible entity list that requires a redistribution of funds, revisions to the state's funding allotment, modifications to state CSBG policies and procedures, and adjustments to the state's organizational standards, policies, procedures, or assessment. You are encouraged to reach out to your assigned CSBG program specialist should you be unsure if you need to make revisions. We will now begin our overview of the requirements for the fiscal year 2025 CSBG state plan, starting with the CSBG eligible entity list. The CSBG eligible entity list, also known as SEAL, serves as the official listing of all CSBG eligible entities receiving the not less than 90% of funds. The list now uses the unique entity identifier, which serves as an identifying number for each CSBG eligible entity. This has replaced the DUNS number. The UEI is now included in the CSBG Smart Forms and allows OCS to assist with tracking of changes. The CSBG entity list is required for all CSBG state and territory grant recipients. It is used to pre-populate several areas of the CSBG state plan, specifically items 5.1, 7.2, and 10.2. For this reason, the CSBG eligible entity list must be submitted prior to initializing a new plan, as the entity list also feeds into the CSBG annual report Smart Forms. OCS is requesting all revisions be completed by July 12, 2024. Upon initializing the plan, please review item 5.1 to ensure you have added or removed any entity from the list as necessary. This includes for reasons such as designation or redesignation, de-designations, or voluntary relinquishments and mergers. These changes must align with your response in the noted items in the plan. If the CSBG eligible entity list has changed in year 2 of an accepted plan, please work with your CSBG program specialist to revise. All right, and now we're going to talk about the SF424M. The SF424M is an Office of Grants Management requirement. It is submitted as part of the CSBG state plan. It is considered the cover page and informs OGM of the authorized official. The authorized official within the SF424M must match the authorized official as described in CSBG State Plan Item 1.2. And the designation letter, which is attached to the CSBG State Plan Item 1.3, OGM uses the SF424M to send the notice of award to the authorized official. If the authorized official changes, the CSBG grant recipient is required to revise their state plan, even if it's in the second of a previously approved 2-year plan. That includes revising the SF424M, as well as the authorized official contact information under item 1.2 and updating the designation letter. This will ensure that OGM sends the notice of award to the correct person. Please also alert your OCS or your CSBG program specialist if the authorized official changes. All right, now we're going to discuss section 1. So the purpose of this section is to collect information on the length of the CSBG state plan. The state CSBG lead agency and authorizing official, state CSBG program contacts, and to receive a copy of the state designation letter. This section is important as it allows the state to ensure the correct individuals are being contacted by the federal government, including for the notice of award. As such, please ensure that state contact and authorizing official information is correct and aligned with what is included on the SF424M. Please also ensure your designation letter is up to date, as the CSBG State Plan must be certified by the designated authorized official through a designation letter. The designated official should be a chief executive officer of the state, and the letter should include, at minimum, the designated state CSBG lead agency and title of the authorized official of the lead agency administering the CSBG grant. The letter should be updated whenever there is a change to the lead agency and/or the authorized designee. And now I will turn it over to Catherine.
Thank you so much, Renee, and good afternoon, everyone. Good morning. We'll discuss Section 2 here, State Legislation and Regulations. This section is in place to collect information on the most up-to-date state legislation and regulations that pertain to the administration of the CSBG grant. It is imperative that the CSBG lead agency share the information and regulations in order to ensure that CSBG is being administered in a manner that is approved by the state and the federal government. If the state legislation or regulations conflict with the federal CSBG Act, the CSBG Act will govern. The flexibility of a block grant like CSBG requires the state to issue sound and clear guidance. In many instances, the state will hear from DCA, "What do your state regulations say?" Now, looking at Section 3, the purpose of this section is to collect information on the mission and responsibilities of the state agency that serves as the CSBG lead. This includes information on the CSBG lead agency's mission, the state's vision and specific goals, the types of input used to develop the state plan, and how eligible entities were involved in the development of the plan. We at OCS are interested in hearing how grant recipients analyze their state and local tools and goals to identify areas for improvement and how they are bringing the input of stakeholders to the decision-making table, such as eligible entities, national TNTA partners, the federal CSBG office, and any other relevant organizations for your network. The ultimate purpose of this process is to ensure that the plan will best serve the communities across your state. Overall, this section is meant to encourage states to align the mission and goals of CSBG to the overall mission of the state, to include voices from the field in assessing and developing the mission and goals, to examine and update local level tools, such as the Community Needs Assessment, to better understand and address community needs, and to ensure engagement in continuous learning and process improvements based on feedback mechanisms, including performance management data and the ACSI. Please refer to CSBG IM 150, Use of the ACSI to Improve Network Effectiveness. This IM will assist in setting realistic, reasonable, attainable, and possible goals for eligible entity overall satisfaction. Great. Now looking at Section 4, the purpose of this section is to ensure that the state meets requirements for the public notice, the public hearing, and the legislative hearing for CSBG state plans, as required in Section 676 of the CSBG Act. To complete Section 4, grant recipients should include information on the process for granting public access to and completion of public hearings, which occur each time a plan is submitted, and legislative hearings, which occur at least every 3 years. Combined hearings are also an option in which there is one joint public and legislative hearing. Public input, as you know, is important for ensuring CSBG is accurately reflecting the needs of the community, and the grant recipient should detail how they provided the public with sufficient time to provide feedback on the state plan. Distribution to the public should include communication directly with the eligible entities, such as over email or publication on the website with specific notification to your eligible entities, as well as any other interested parties. Grant recipients need to provide documentation, including but not limited to agendas, sign-in sheets, transcripts, and notices or advertisements of your hearings. States should further ensure that policies, procedures, and rules relating to the state's hearing process are regularly reviewed and updated. As discussed, it is crucial to ensure the public receives notice for the CSBG plan development and related hearings, as we want to be sure to accurately reflect the needs of the community. And to encourage participation, some considerations include the following. Please consider the purpose of the hearings as we strive to go beyond compliance in this space. For example, we know that maximum feasible participation is a key tenet of community action and CSBG. You could ask yourselves, how can we reach more people and communities to make sure their voices are being heard and their recommendations are being reflected in the CSBG State Plan? Be sure to utilize all resources available to reach people and communities where they are, such as through the state association or through the entities themselves. Such engagement with your state planning process will only strengthen the plan itself and strengthen your approach to administering the grant. With that in mind, consider providing no fewer than 30 days for the public to provide feedback on the plan. Grant recipients might also consider providing a draft of the state plan to eligible entities even earlier, or engaging a work group around the topic so as to gain input while the plan is still being developed. And as to engagement with the hearings in particular, OCS encourages states to think outside the box and explore new ways to increase stakeholder participation in the hearings. Now looking at Section 5, the purpose of this section is to collect data on CSBG eligible entities, including entity type and service area, and information on important changes to the eligible entity list. A goal of the CSBG network, as we know, is to ensure that we are getting most of the funding to the communities we serve, and that is done through our eligible entities, making this section quite important. The CSBG eligible entity list is crucial to the completion of Section 5. Item 5.1 is the official listing of all CSBG eligible entities receiving the not less than 90% of funds allocated to the CSBG grant recipients. This list pre-populates from the eligible entity list, again emphasizing the need to make timely and accurate revisions to the list, and preferably prior to when you initialize the plan. If item 5.1 does not pre-populate, again, please always reach out to your program specialist for additional assistance. Also in this section, items 5.3A, B, and C are utilized to share any changes to the grant recipient's previous roster of eligible entities. By accurately completing this section, grant recipients can better understand where the targeted training and technical assistance may be required, and to help ensure service areas are not going without access. OCS requests that state grant recipients actively share with the federal office any expected changes to your eligible entity list. And OCS also requests that grant recipients utilize the federal office by ideally requesting assistance with the processes of action such as dedesignations, mergers, and voluntary relinquishments. All right, looking at our next section, we want to start off with a poll. So true or false, let us know whether the organizational standards are outlined in the CSBG Act. We'll take a moment here. Okay, it looks like the overwhelming majority is correct. The correct answer is B, false. Section 678B of the CSBG Act requires that state CSBG lead agencies establish performance goals, administrative standards, financial management requirements, and other requirements to ensure an appropriate level of accountability and quality among the state's eligible entities that receive CSBG funds. But as noted, the organizational standards are not outlined, but you can find further information in IM 138, which we'll be discussing here shortly. The CSBG organizational standards were developed through an OCS-funded cooperative agreement, the Center of Excellence, or COE, to strengthen the capacity of all eligible entities. In Section 6, states will describe their procedures related to organizational standards. This includes the choice of standards you will be implementing, such as those developed by the Center of Excellence, the Center of Excellence version with modifications, or an alternative standard. While states have discretion on the set of standards that they may use, OCS does recommend states use the organizational standards developed by the Center of Excellence because they reflect the requirements of the CSBG Act, good management practices, and the values of community action. In this section, the state will also provide information on the state level implementation process, the assessment procedures, including corrective action procedures and special circumstances and/or exceptions to that process. The information that the states provide in this section allows us in OCS to assess if the state's policies and procedures meet the requirements under the CSBG Act and identify any needed training and technical assistance. Again, please review IM 138 to better understand the state's roles and responsibilities for the establishment of organizational standards for eligible entities. This information memorandum serves as a guidance tool for states and eligible entities to better understand what the organizational standards are, to establish a robust assessment process, and where to find promising practices and other tools. Also, for some helpful tips for strong monitoring and oversight of the eligible entities' organizational standards, OCS recommends that the state establish a robust assessment process that includes clear communication to eligible entities, an annual assessment on the status of standards for reporting to OCS in the CSBG annual report, and an assurance that the assessment of standards is independently verified by the state or by a third party. Also essential is an inclusive and well-informed process, and therefore the state is strongly encouraged to collaborate with eligible entities and the state association to set appropriate targets to meet the state's goals. Stakeholders in the network can provide valuable insight on the organizational capacity of the entities, the realistic achievement of performance targets, and areas for training and technical assistance that will be needed to achieve the new target. In OCS, we also want to emphasize that organizational standards should supplement your state's monitoring process. It should not be the only component when conducting your state's monitoring of eligible entities. Section 7 is a critical segment of the state plan as it outlines how funds will be allocated, distributed, and managed among eligible entities, and use of any remaining funds for administrative expenses and discretionary spending. Section 7 allows OCS to see a comprehensive picture of how funding is being used and financial management and accountability principles across the network. Under CSBG Act Section 675C, states are required to demonstrate a planned allocation of no less than 90% of the funds to eligible entities. This ensures compliance and proper distribution of resources among those who need them most. To help visualize this distribution, the state plan provides a table that outlines the percentage of allocated funds for each entity receiving funds during the fiscal year or years addressed by the plan. By doing so, recipients promote transparency and facilitate better understanding of how these funds are utilized. It is important to note that this data will directly impact the state's annual report, specifically in Module 1, Table E2. And when we talk about the PEAAK framework, Item 7.2 ensures focus remains on effective planned allocation and that recipients can improve their performance through effective resource management and service delivery. This allows for better evaluation and, in turn, greater accountability for providing equitable support to eligible entities. Furthermore, it improves accessibility by ensuring that financial resources reach the intended recipients. And finally, it enriches our knowledge base by using data to make informed decisions for the future. The distribution timeframe referenced in item 7.4 ensures that allocated funds reach eligible entities within 30 days, calendar days, following the federal award by OCS. The prompt distribution of these funds is crucial in ensuring aid reaches those who need it. Item 7.4a requires states who fail to meet this 30-day deadline to have proper procedures in place to guarantee funds remain available to eligible entities consistently and without interruption. Importantly, item 7.4 directly connects to State Accountability Measure 2SA and may affect your state's annual report form. Overall, efficiency and transparency in procedures create better performance and evaluation systems and foster a sense of accountability among all involved. Prompt and consistent funding ensures accessibility of resources and helps us improve our knowledge of what works best for our communities. And the final item we want to discuss in section 7 is item 7.6, which focuses on the allocation of funds for various activities. This section plays a vital role in determining the percentage of the planned allocation dedicated to these activities for the federal fiscal years covered by the plan. Please keep in mind that this information pre-populates the state's annual report, specifically Module 1, Table E4. Ensuring accuracy in this section will not only streamline your reporting process, but also reflect your commitment to transparency and responsible management of CSBG funds. By being proactive and diligent about completing section 7.6, you will contribute to a properly managed CSBG grant that fosters growth and development within your communities. So to complete this section effectively, consider the following activities. Please review your organization's budget and historical allocation percentages for administrative activities. Analyze any trends or changes in these allocations and determine if adjustments are needed for the upcoming fiscal years. Consider the impact of any new programs or initiatives in your community that may require additional administrative support. Ensure that the specified percentage is aligned with your overall strategic plan and goals for community development. And keep documentation supporting your allocation decisions readily available for reference during potential audits or reviews. Understanding the impact of use of funds on performance, evaluation, accountability, accessibility, and knowledge is crucial as it allows us to gauge our progress, maintain a high-quality standard, ensure accountability at all levels, foster accessibility for all eligible individuals and entities, and promote knowledge sharing within the community. And with that, over to you, Renee.
Thank you, Catherine. Now let's take a look at Section 8. So the purpose of Section 8 is to describe the state's plan for delivering CSBG funded training and technical assistance to eligible entities. This includes the TNTA schedule for Year 1 and Year 2, if applicable, the planned budget, any existing technical assistance plans, and performance management adjustments. The TNTA described in this section should address the needs of the eligible entities supporting the successful and efficient administration of CSBG. It is important to use the knowledge from annual reports, direct feedback from eligible entities and the state associations, and any observed challenges when determining what this TNTA schedule will look like. Providing a thorough outline of the state TNTA plan will allow the federal government to see where need is greatest and help us determine where to focus federal TNTA efforts. OCS remains committed to targeting the most needed areas for TNTA across the network. For example, the TNTA Needs Assessment Survey, conducted nationwide in 2022, has informed TNTA offerings which OCS has funded through cooperative agreements with national and regional partners. Please see our recent Dear Colleague letter from April highlighting this commitment and outlining current efforts to maximize efficient TNTA efforts. All right, here's now time for a little activity. Now, please share with your colleagues what you have done in your state with the CSBG TNTA funding in the past. Feel free to write a response in the chat and take a look at other states' responses for inspiration. And I'll give y'all time to put it in the chat. And this will be a great opportunity just to hear and see what other states are doing. All right, we got community level initiatives, competitive awards from Christine. Benjamin said, like many states, we work with our state associations. Good. And as we continue throughout this presentation, if anybody has any additional ideas or examples just come to mind, feel free to continue, to still share, because we would love to learn what each state is doing, each territory is doing, and I'm sure other states will be curious too. We have Genevieve, who said we had DOE staff present on funding opportunities related to clean energy justice 40 for CIAs at the State Association Conference. Thank you all for sharing. We're going to go ahead and move on to section 9. And feel free to continue to share if y'all have any ideas or anything else you would like to share. So the purpose of section 9 is to detail the state level linkages and coordination that the state intends to create or maintain to ensure increased access to CSBG services for individuals, families, and communities with low income. In these responses, OCS wants to know, how does the CSBG network work and partner with communities and other anti-poverty programs to provide the best opportunities possible? How does the state office meaningfully collaborate with their own government, their local network of CAAs, and organizations across the community to ensure high quality, innovative, and locally driven services are available to individuals and families living in poverty? These collaborations are not always through a contract for services or involve an MOU. We want to see any actively pursued linkages and collaborative efforts meant to improve services. All right, and then section 676B of the CSBG Act requires an assurance that the participating states will coordinate and link with other government and social service programs. This is important for ensuring the effective delivery of to the population served by CSBG. By braiding and blending funding, not only are states performing more efficiently, but they are also providing a better wraparound services to the individuals and families who need help. Now, here's an example. So one example of state-level coordination and linkages is through WIOA, the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. The CSBG network is a natural and important partner within the workforce system and has a long history of collaborating with public and private workforce partners to better support the need of people living in high poverty areas. CSBG is incorporated into WIOA in two significant ways, as a required one-stop partner or as an optional combined state plan partner program. Under WIOA, CSBG is a required one-stop partner if the state uses CSBG funds for employment and training services. More specifically, if an eligible entity carries out employment and training activities, then these activities must be accessible at the comprehensive one-stop centers, either through a physical presence or another means of access. The state also has the option to include CSBG as Combined State Plan Partner Program, which requires the CSBG office to be meaningfully included in the strategic planning and coordination with the state board, the core programs, and any other partner programs. While both require the state to include CSBG in the common elements of the WIOA state plan, participation as a combined state plan partner program requires more thorough integration across the common elements as well as completion of a CSBG specific portion of the WIOA combined state plan. Further, a state that has a combined state plan does not always select CSBG to be a combined state partner. With this knowledge, to answer the question in item 9.4, you should only select yes if you are a combined state plan partner program in the state's WIOA combined state plan. This means you assisted in completing a separate designated section for CSBG in the WIOA combined state plan. If you are not a combined state plan partner program in the WIOA combined state plan, select no. If you select no and are still a required one-stop partner, noting that many CSBG eligible entities are engaged with your local workforce partners and American job centers, Select no and complete the narrative for 9.4B regarding the employment and training activities and a description of how CSBG partners with the workforce system. This may include reference to a memoranda of understanding. There are only a few states who should be answering yes for this item, but many states should be sharing their participation as a required one-stop partner. If you are unsure, please ask your assigned CSBG program specialist. So here's a poll question. Noting the complexity of CSBG and WIOA, OCS would like to know if you are interested in learning more about the role of CSBG in WIOA. And we'll give you about 30 seconds to select a response. We have several yeses coming in. Okay, so we have an overwhelming amount of yeses in this poll, so we'll keep that in mind and take note. And we're going to go ahead and move on to the next slide. Thank you. Okay, so to foster strong linkages and effective coordination, clear and consistent communication with established partners is necessary. Item 9.9 and 9.10 requires you to think through your general communication with entities, associations, and other partners, and specifically around performance on state accountability, measures, and feedback for the OCS. This section allows the grant recipient to set standards for effective and clear communication and in turn, strengthening partnerships. Okay, now let's get into section 10. So section 10 describes planned monitoring and associated procedures in 4 areas: the monitoring process, corrective action, termination and reduction of funding eligible entities designation, de-designation and redesignation, and lastly, fiscal controls and audits. Effective monitoring ensures CSBG funds are used properly and reach communities in need. Okay, so let's begin with the monitoring process, detailed in item 10.1. This includes the proposed schedule for monitoring reviews, policies, and initial reports. Regular monitoring helps identify issues early and ensures funds are used efficiently. Integrating the PEAAK framework here enhances fund usage efficiency, continuous improvement, financial integrity, resource accessibility, and process refinement. Next, in item 10.2, covers correction action. This involves procedures for addressing findings and implementing quality improvement plans. Proper corrective action ensures any issues are promptly resolved to maintain the integrity of the CSBG program. And then in item 10.4, it focuses on fiscal controls and audits. This ensures proper fiscal management and compliance with single audit requirements. Effective fiscal controls maintain financial integrity and ensures funds are managed responsibly. And then lastly, let's discuss the policies for eligible entity designation, item 10.8, redesignation, 10.9, and de-designation, item 10.10. These sections describe the process for designating new entities, redesignating existing ones, and de-designating entities when necessary. Clear designation processes ensure high-performing entities enhance fund usage, regular assessments identify insufficiencies, and transparent procedures uphold integrity. Fair procedures ensure equal opportunities, and documentation and feedback refine policies and improve decision-making. All right, and so OCS has seen many questions regarding the process of de-designation, designation, and redesignation. It is important that state grant recipients take time to clarify regulations, policies, and/or procedures regarding these processes, and that is information, and that information is easily accessible by the federal government. Most important, if your state does not have policies and procedures, this section presents an opportunity to develop a procedure or process for these actions. Grant recipients should ensure that their state policies and procedures are in line with Section 67A of the CSBG Act and IM 116, Corrective Action, Termination, and Reduction of Funding. The federal government can assist in providing clarity around these processes and assist in ensuring all requirements under the CSBG Act and IM 116 are met. Please reach out if you think a de-designation or redesignation or designation is likely to occur or has already occurred. Please also reach out if assistance is needed in developing clear policies and procedures. We are here to help. And with that, I'll turn it over to Catherine to go over Section 11.
Great, thank you, Renee. All right, looking at Section 11, the purpose of this section, eligible entity tripartite boards, is to review the tripartite board requirements, including tripartite board verifications and what measures are taken to ensure states verify eligible entities are meeting the board requirements, how often the grant recipients require the entities to provide updates regarding tripartite boards, and what methods are used to ensure compliance, a description of how a state verifies that eligible entities have policies and procedures in place by which individuals or organizations can petition for adequate representation on a tripartite board, and if the state permits public agencies to use an alternative to tripartite boards. Section 676B of the CSBG Act requires that as a condition of designation, private nonprofit entities and public organizations administer CSBG through tripartite boards that fully participate in the development, planning, implementation, and evaluation of CSBG. In alignment with the community action tenet of maximum feasible participation and OCS's priority around lifting up voices from the field, tripartite boards must include representatives from the community, to include neighborhood and community groups that may represent individuals and communities with low incomes. And for more detail, please see that section of the CSBG Act 678B and the CSBG IM 82. All right, looking at Section 12 on eligibility, it's time for a poll question here. So, according to the CSBG Act of 1998, what is the income eligibility threshold for CSBG? Is it A, 100% of the federal poverty level, B, 125% of the state median income for your state, C, 125% of the federal poverty level, or D, 200% of the federal poverty level? Okay, great. Looks like we've got several folks who've been studying up on this. We've got item C is the correct answer, and we'll discuss that here in just a moment. So that is 125% of the federal poverty level was what is in the CSBG Act of 1998. Okay, the purpose of Section 12 is for the state to identify what level as a percent of the federal poverty level, or FPL, will be used as a threshold for eligibility determination, and the various policies and procedures related to the determination of eligibility for individual and family services, general and short-term services, and community targeted services. As a reminder, Section 673 of the Act explains that a state may elect to set the threshold at no greater than 125% of the federal poverty level as set by the federal HHS. The tables with the federal poverty guidelines are updated and released annually, typically in January of each year, by the HHS Assistant Secretary for Planning and Evaluation, or ASPE. States are required to use the most updated levels for the given year. Starting in federal fiscal year 2020, as you know, in response to the onset of COVID-19, the CARES Act allowed states to increase the income eligibility threshold for CSBG to 200% of the federal poverty level. This change has remained in effect through the continuing resolutions since then, and this may be updated by Congress in the future. So as you are working on Section 12 as a consideration, you may want to adopt language explaining that your state will set the income eligibility threshold at 125% FPL unless authorized by Congress to use the 200% FPL limit instead. And should congressional action remove the ability to use a 200% FPL, states may be required to amend their state plan if they include a level above 125% only. So wording that indicates this flexibility would prevent the need for a state plan amendment in the future. And as a consideration in Section 12, you may, okay, excuse me, I'm going on here to the next section here. So here you see, or the next sample footnote language here we have from a notice of award for the fiscal year 2024 Q2 funding release. This language in your notice of award authorizes the use of the 200% federal poverty level limit until a specific date or congressional action. And as you know, currently Congress has authorized utilizing 200% FPL through September 30th, 2024. Okay, now looking at our next section, Section 13. The purpose of this section on ROMA and performance accountability is to collect information related to assurances under Section 676B12 regarding the performance management system and Section 676B11 regarding community action plans and assessments. Under Section 676B12, the state must assure that they and all eligible entities participate in one of three options: the results-oriented management and accountability, or ROMA system, another performance measurement system for which the secretary facilitated the development, that's HHS, or an alternative system for measuring performance and promoting self-sufficiency, family stability, and community revitalization. This is more clearly laid out in response to items 13.1 through 13.4 and includes how the state will support the eligible entities in using ROMA or an alternative performance management system. Items 13.5 and 6 pertain to the assurance under Section 676B11 that the state will secure a community action plan, or CAP, which will include a community needs assessment from each eligible entity in the state as a condition for receipt of funding. Beyond an explicit requirement under the CSBG Act, these assurances are important to the administration of the grant, as they will help ensure the grant recipient has engaged thoughtfully in developing their performance management system and ensuring there's a clear process for the development of CAPs and the implementation of CNAs, community needs assessments, all of which will ensure the provision of services that will be in line with the community needs. And please see IM 144 regarding state and federal accountability measures and data collection modernization, and IM 138 regarding state establishment of organizational standards for more detail. Back to you, Renee.
Thank you, Catherine. Okay, so let's go over Section 14. So Section 14, the purpose of Section 14 is to describe how the state will guarantee or assure that the CSBG funds will be used to carry out required activities. More specifically, Section 14 includes narrative responses for the assurances required under Section 676B of the CSBG Act. These assurances refer to use of funds to support local activities, specifically for CSBG services, needs of youth, and coordination of other programs, state use of discretionary funds, eligible entity service delivery, coordination and innovation, eligible entity emergency food and nutrition services, state and eligible entity coordination and linkages, federal investigations, funding reduction or termination, coordination with faith-based organizations, charitable groups, community organizations, eligible entity tripartite board representation, eligible entity community action plans, and community needs assessments, and state and eligible entity performance measurement. There is also a final checkbox to confirm the CSBG authorized official has certified the assurances. As it relates to PEAAK, Section 14 is intended to ensure both performance and accountability in the state plan. By assuring that all requirements under the CSBG Act will be met, the grant recipient is certifying that they are performing as intended and aware of these necessary components of the grant program. All right, on to the final section, section 15. The purpose of this section is for the state to verify or acknowledge that CSBG funds will not be used to carry out prohibited activities and the reporting of such activities. These certifications include the topics of lobbying, drug-free workplace requirements, debarment, suspension, and other responsibility matters, and environmental tobacco smoke. This section is an area of accountability, this time for federal requirements. Like with section 14 and section 15, the checkboxes are there to ensure compliance with these different topics on the part of the grant recipients. Okay, everyone, thank you for hanging with us. That is the end of the CSBG State Plan. Before leaving, we would like to share the contact information of each team within the Division of Community Assistance. We are also including the link to the contact page for our office. On the screen now, this is our division leadership team. We have the division, recognizing time, and we will also give y'all the slides and plus the link of the contact information. We're just gonna y'all can see this, so we can go ahead and go to questions. We really want to have time for questions. And just as a reminder, please use the Q&A pod, the Q&A to ask any questions. Okay. So seeing none, we'll wait for a couple more seconds to see if anyone has questions. Okay, well, thank you all. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, everyone, for joining us during the series. I know we're a little bit 10 minutes over, but I hope it was worth that. And we also wanted to do a final poll because we want some feedback to see how the utility of this webinar was. So please, before leaving, if you could fill out the poll on a scale of 1 to 5, please rate the utility of this webinar. And then once you fill it out, you are more than welcome to leave. And thank you again for joining us. And also, we do have 2 more sessions tomorrow and Thursday at 2 p.m. These are more in-depth sessions going over the state plan. And those will be 90 minutes long. So we really encourage, if you want a more thorough if you need a more thorough review of the state plan, please join those as well. And once more, happy Community Action Month, everyone.